finally have a Disability Act passed in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Clement. I'm pretty sure we'll go on, and some of them would definitely ask you more questions.
But I will appeal that I will be listening to Iyom because I'm interested in hearing her. I'm going to be on audio alone. I had pleaded with Cosmos, and we had negotiated that I would suspend an activity I have at this time just to be at this forum. So I would go back to the activity, but I will be listening on audio to the conversations. And I really, really do thank you, Wilson, again, and the Albino Foundation for the privilege of being in this forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Clement, for those insights. And we hope when we have a question for you, we'll come back to you. And we hope you can quickly just come back and respond as you also join the.
Thank you.
Thank you. Many thanks for your time and the very fantastic contributions and insights you provided. Thank you so much. On behalf of all the participants and everyone, we acknowledge your presence, and we are sure, don't worry, to all of you that want him to respond to your questions, I'm sure we'll have him in subsequent editions as well. And as we reach out to you, we are sure you would oblige us and come to provide this mentorship series, which has come to stay and is going to be monthly. And we will have insights for these persons with disabilities as they journey on towards elective office, hopefully 2023 or even before then with local elections. Thank you, Clement.
Thank you, Wilson.
Thank you. We'll move back down to the next presentation, which is a presentation by my project coordinator. He recently became a very good friend of ours. We've crossed paths, and it's like we've known each other for a while now because of the way we've interacted in the past couple of weeks. Hamza Fasifiri is the project coordinator for the European Center for Electoral Support. He's been an astute and fine politician in Brussels, Belgium. He's of Moroccan descent, but has been in Brussels right from his early young age, and he's had an extensive political career in Brussels, ranging from municipal elections to rising to the vice presidency of his party in the Brussels area of Belgium. He's a media expert as well. He's been in that space, working, advocating on several issues, of course, and I'm pretty sure the issues of persons with disability has been issues that he's also come across, has navigated, those waters. He's here today to also share his experiences with us, of course, of his political sojourn, as well as, of course, what the lessons, the comparative lessons that persons with disabilities could adopt in their quest for political life. He will be making a presentation on the issues of access to political arena for persons with disabilities in Nigeria. Of course, a comparative analysis and experience sharing of his own journey in politics. So Hamza, the floor is yours. Of course, you can add any other elements you want to in a minute, while of course you have the floor to make your presentation, and questions will be on for you, I'm pretty sure, from our panelists. So distinguished panelists, you have Hamza on the floor now.
Well, thank you. Sorry, thank you, Menji. First, let me tell you before an audience how pleased I am to have such a great colleague as you working with me. And I must say that it's very weird of a situation to be able to, weave such a great relationship through screens. So that's very promising. Once I'll be deployed, so how the quality of our relationships can be in the future. So thank you anyway for your warm welcome. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. Greetings from Brussels. As Menji said in the presentation, I'm the new project coordinator for ECES in Nigeria, but still in Brussels now. So very looking forward to be deployed as soon as borders are reopened. I would like to thank you, Jake, for this great opportunity you're offering me today to be with you. with the audience and discussing this very important topic. I would like also to share greetings with our other panelists, Excellency, Madam Minister, also Professor Clement. I was very interested by the presentation you've made. And ladies and gentlemen, let me also express how glad I am to have this opportunity to discuss with citizens that are committed to democracy, that are passionate by civil engagement. And this is what driven me for so long in the political arena and still driving me today under new responsibilities. So indeed, Jake, this topic is of course important, and you've asked me to share my experience as a part of a minority community in Belgium, because as a minority or member of a minority group, we sometimes have similar difficulties accessing to the political sphere, or more generally said, difficulties to make our voices heard. So if you allow me, I will share with you a personal experience and try to draw out of it some lessons learned that can maybe, I hope so, at least inspire the conversation about the PWD's access to political sphere. So maybe my entry point would be to share with you the definition of democracy I used to use when I was active in politics. Generally, we say that democracy is the rule of the majority, which is true, and which is also a good thing, in contrast to the rule of a few, of course. But there is another definition that, for me, makes even more sense than that, which is, besides the rule of the majority, the protection of the minorities. And for me, this is what makes a democracy vivid, strong, not only securing that few people will take the lead on the society, this is the majority aspect of it, but also securing, guaranteeing rights and opportunities for the minorities within societies. And this definition is broad and makes sense because it puts inclusivity at the core of a vivid democracy. And I think this is the work the foundation is also doing, and all the other civil society organizations and activists that try to promote this inclusiveness, which is actually a promotion of a vivid democracy. So let me tell you now about my personal background in this framework. As Manji said, I was born in Morocco. I grew up in Morocco until 12. And then I moved to Belgium with my parents for professional reasons, of course. So as a child, I went with them and then spent my secondary school years in Belgium. And then I studied there. I found my friends there. I get married in Belgium. So my professional career started there. So quite naturally, when I wanted to get involved in politics, it was, of course, in Belgium rather than in Morocco. Even I have this dual citizenship. So I applied for the Belgian citizenship. And that was a natural step to me because, you know, I felt Belgian because of these years that helped me become who I am today. So I started my involvement in Belgian politics. And you need to know, to understand my story, that there is a quite important community of Moroccans and Turkish people and many different neighboring countries in Belgium. And that's because of the economic history of Belgium. In the 60s, a lot of Western countries lacked workforce to build the country, to allow for this huge economic growth that was ongoing at that time. And because of that lack of workforce, they called for young men from, you know, the Mediterranean countries. And these young men arrived in Belgium, helped build the country, and brought their wives with them and had children in Belgium. A couple of decades later, these generations of Moroccans, Turkish, that became Belgians, needed to express some of their, needs and expectations in the political arena. And it was quite difficult because they were minorities. They didn't have, access to the networks. They didn't have access to the media and so on. So one legislative step had been taken and changed a lot of things in Belgian politics. In the year 2000, the parliament passed a bill facilitating the access to citizenship to all these minorities who were in the country for decades. And from that moment, political parties decided to reach out to these communities because they saw a kind of electoral opportunity for them to grow the number of to increase the number of voters they could have. So they started looking for personalities from these communities to put them on their lists, on their electoral lists, to help them connect with these communities and gain their votes. And actually, I benefited from this dynamic that allowed me to indeed stand for elections, get elected at parliament for 12 years, 3 mandates, etc. So it was important for political parties to have representatives from the minority groups to gain their votes, but it was also important for the minority groups to have access to influence sphere to make their voices heard. So it was a kind of a win-win game. And of course, it didn't go without, difficulties, frictions, sometimes tensions in the social and political debate. It's not a kind of a bed of roses. It's not a, a straightforward story. But at the end of the day, if we need to look at the whole dynamic, it's a very positive story that allowed a very important number of minority groups and communities to be included in politics. So what were the factors that allowed such a positive move? If I need to draw some lessons from this story, first of all, it's the electoral system itself. Belgium has a proportional electoral system. It's not a majority system. Per design, this is a system that allows for a better or a bigger, at least, representation of the population, because it's not, the FTPT system, the winner takes all, or this kind of majority systems. It's proportionate, which means that even if you're not a majority, you gain seats and you have access to the media, and you have access to the power, you have access to the decision-making processes. And that's an important element, I think. Without a proportional system, I'm not sure political parties would have reach out to these minority groups in the same way. And I'm not sure that so many MPs today from these communities would have their seats in parliament. So the electoral system has this impact. A second element, which is quite related to the first one, is that the parties submit lists for the elections. It's not a uninominal system. So for every constituency where you have an election going, parties present a list of a certain number of candidates. And that's also, per design, something that facilitates a representation of different categories of the population on the lists. And at the end of the day, it's the citizen who makes his own decision, because he can choose on the list whose representative he wants to see elected. So even if you're, for example, number 4 on the list, but you gain more votes than the number 1 on the list, then it's the number 4 who get elected and not the number 1. So it's a quite democratic, let's say, setting. It's quite competitive because you have a lot of competition within the parties, within the lists, with such a system, but it also allows for better representation. Can you still hear me now? I had to push back a call. Okay, thank you. So that's one, the electoral system and institutional, let's say, framework. There is another element that helped a lot the representation of the minorities I was talking about, which is the law I mentioned before, the 2000 law that facilitated the access to citizenship, to Belgian citizenship. Of course, it's not applicable per se to the PWDs reality. But the point I want to stress here is the importance of legislation to open up the space, the democratic space, and the inclusivity and the inclusion of all groups. And what allowed this law to be passed, what facilitated the debate, was also the great commitment and involvement of civil society activists and organizations, because they were the ones who at the first, at the beginning of the story, started advocating for these minorities, reaching out to parties, defending some draft laws, presenting their ideas to the media, sensitizing the public opinion. So the civil society organizations, hand in hand with the unions, labor unions, in our particular case in Belgium for these minorities, played an instrumental role in creating pressure on political parties until that moment where they voted and they passed this citizenship law in 2000. So maybe to wrap up and not to speak more than the 10 minutes I had, the message I want to share with you today is to be able to promote the access to the political sphere of the minorities in general, of persons with disabilities, women, ethnic or religious minorities. My personal experience showed me that it's important to work upstream with civil society organizations, reach out to parties, try to identify allies within political parties to build up this coalition of interest until the moment that the legislation changes and makes things possible for the minorities. Of course, different strategies can exist. Different strategies can also merge towards the same objective, but at least this is the strategy I could see that has been used in Belgium for this cultural or national minority I told you about. I don't know if I still have time or if we can spare some time for the questions, if you may, if you have some. But thank you anyway for your interest, and I hope my testimony was useful for the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hamza, for sharing your experiences as a minority politician in Brussels. But of course, a minority politician that ended up achieving majority results because at a point you were the mayor of the city of Brussels, where you were deputy mayor, right?
I was deputy mayor for
exactly.
6 years in Brussels, but I had the great privilege to be the speaker of parliament for 1 year and a half, and that was the first time in Belgian history where an MP from foreign background could serve at this type of positions in the country. So that was a great privilege, and that shows also how once you start, opening the political arena, you can have so many dynamics that can happen. And that shows how important it is to work upstream, building coalitions with civil society organizations and finding allies within the political parties.
Exactly. So you see how important it was to make mention of that particular point, because it's no mean feat, of course, given your experiences and the waters you had to, swim through to have such, a successful and colorful political career. Let me take questions from the participants so that we have a question by Agbo Chris. It's in the chat room. And he says, Hamza, what kind of legislation can assist PWDs in Nigeria to open up space for political participation? A guide for us to work with. I hope that's clear, but you can also find it in the chat room. So that's his question.
Thank you. Thank you. A very important question indeed, because as I said, I believe in the influence of legislation on the behavioral change in politics. From my experience, the PWDs in Belgium could also benefit from improvements in access to the political sphere based on actually international commitments that the Belgian government and the Belgian parliament took vis-a-vis the PWDs, because of course, you know that better than I do. There are so many international treaties, international commitments, international organizations working on the rights of PWDs, and our work as politicians, pushed in the back by the civil society organizations, was to monitor the way the government was committing to its own engagements, international engagements. So this is a way, maybe an indirect way, because it's not a national legislation, it's an international legislation, but the national players can put pressure monitoring the way the government meets the international commitments of the country. Doing that, for example, every year we had a plenary session in the parliament dedicated to debates to assess the way government made some additional steps to meet the international commitments. So doing that, pushing pressure, exerting permanent monitoring helped improve the general situation of the PWDs in Belgium, but also their political role. I don't know if that first element could help. I could add that there are many legislations dedicated to improve the life of PWDs in general, but not specifically aiming at their political participation. That is not through the laws. The laws are oriented towards, for example, obliging local governments to invest in the access to the public buildings, or investing money to help, PWDs dispose of financial aid to have the tools they need to improve their daily work. So you have a lot of debates to draft laws aiming at these important elements of PWDs' life, but not laws dedicated to their political participation. This is mostly done through influence, through political pressure, through the commitments political parties can make responding to civil society, pressure.
Thank you, Hamza. It's quite noteworthy to point out the issues of public policies that you've mentioned on the issues of access to social infrastructure, which coincidentally, of course, Clement has also mentioned is a huge challenge and has to be dealt with in some way to ensure that persons with disabilities are included in every aspect of life, if we must say. Of course, sustained advocacy in that regard is a very key element, and you cannot afford to not speak on these issues as often as the platforms are made available. And that is why, of course, whenever the opportunities arise, we are quite happy to see persons with disabilities rising up to raise these issues. And we know that your eventual participation in Parliament will also afford you platforms to take more concrete steps towards the actualization of some of these issues that have plagued the success of persons with disabilities in political life. I know that Abdullahi Jugnu, his hand is still up at the moment. Technical team, I don't know if you can be able to have him unmuted quickly so that we move to the next session, the next and last session of the presentation. Abdullahi Jugnu, just check now and see if you can unmute yourself. I think you're in a space that you can be able to do that. You're unmuted. Can you go ahead, please?
Yeah. Good day, Hamza, and once congratulations. My questions go to you, please. In Belgium, the day physical or disability have a political appointment as we have here in Nigeria? Thank you so much.
You're muted, Hamza. And especially the issues of appointments in Belgium, do they have provisions for appointing appointive offices?
Thank you, Abdullah, for your question. Yes, we do have legislation at the local level, for example, that makes it mandatory for the municipalities, for example, to have at least a certain percentage of civil servants with disabilities, and to guarantee that they can do their job in the best conditions. So we do have some kind of, provisions of that kind, be it through law or through municipal regulations or regional regulations. But for civil service office, not for political office. Maybe to complete my answer and also to link to the first question as well, the keystone legislation to me for political participation, and I'm talking about the Belgian example here, is the electoral system itself. Because as long as you have a majority system with one single candidate per constituency per party, the competition for this position is, of course, much higher than in a system where you have a list of candidates with a proportional system. So I think this electoral system issue, I think, helped improve the political participation in Belgium compared to other countries from the Western European countries. I know, for example, and the best example I know is France, where they have a majority system with uninominal system at parliamentary level. At the municipal level, they have a more proportional system, a mixed system actually, with a list for parties. And what we observe is that, again, at the municipal level, they have a bigger presence of PWDs in municipal councils, for example, compared to what they have at the parliamentary level, at the national level. So I think this is a keystone element. To what extent can the debate be moved towards, a change of electoral system? That's a question I keep open to you. But for me, that's something that can change a lot.
Thank you, Hamza. The technical team, one more question from Jacob Agba for this session. Can you enable him so he can ask his question? Jacob Agba. While we're having him, Hamza, I would also ask you, have you had any direct experiences of working with persons with disabilities? And if yes, how do you assess their participation? And you know, and their contribution towards political life as well. But you can answer that when you are responding to the question of Jacob Agba, who will be asking you his question in a second. Jacob, I'm sure you can unmute yourself now.
Jacob is not unmuting himself. So I tried to unmute him. He is not unmuting himself. So maybe we go to.
Can you just go ahead? If you had any direct experience working with.
Can you hear me?
He's unmuted now. He's unmuted. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. In Cross River State in particular, our campaign to bring about inclusion has started yielding some results. But unfortunately, what we observe is that persons with disability may be given appointments with no schedule, no office. I don't know what else we should do in this regard. Thank you.
Okay, I hope that question was clear enough. So persons with disabilities are usually appointed without a specific description of what they are expected to accomplish in the offices. So is there any advice you have for any individual that finds himself in such a position?